Hello, hello. Okay, this is your boy Shrimp once again. Back to you. How's the art gang going on? Well, anyway, I'm just gonna do a quick stream here today, and once again, as you can see, I'm gonna continue my fan art here for Miss Wednesday Adams, and I'll probably add some. Whoops, should change that to a hand maybe. There we go. Much better. We won't be able to do any errors with this. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go add some background and uh, probably put the base color on the design for the now, and then maybe start finalizing some of the designs, especially the hair and the face, because that would win over a lot of people more than any other part of the design. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do today. Mm, So, okay. So for the story, the continuation of the That Mage doesn't want a fourth time. As you can see, where's the thumbnail? Excuse me. Oh, here we go. So, uh, yeah, the cover is volume 7 right now. I don't know why it's quite different compared to the guide that I'm looking at. Yeah, the comparison of the story chapters compared to the volume chapters or volume covers is quite different when it comes to the numbering. But right now, this is the current story. We got the vampire that Vandally killed last time, and the hero who killed his mother, and Vandally over here. So yeah, this is the continuation of that story for today. I think we're going to read some summary chapter first. I'm gonna probably yeah, hasten the speed of this chapter so that we can get over this quickly, and then I'll return it to 0.15 speed once we finish this. Let's just see. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, we'll continue with the art today. I'll I'll probably put some cemetery. I'm not very sure. But yeah, the vision that is coming to me when I'm looking at this, I want to put some trees. Should be wet. There will be raindrops, and yeah, just the environment really wet. And I'll put some. I'll put probably a tombstone at the background with some trees, leaves, and you know what? We'll see. We'll see. I'll just sketch it out right now and see what we can see what I'll be able to make out of this. Okay, so that's pretty much most of what I'm about to say. That's enough of it, and let's continue with the story and me doing the design today. Let's continue the art. I'm excited to finish this. I'll be very psyched for uh, the speed run of the time lapse speed for this one. Hopefully that it will turn out really well. But yeah, anyway. Okay, continuation of the story. I'll talk to you guys later. Hopefully the volume is right.
Chapter V4 Character Summary Page.
Loud to my headset.
Vandally, the protagonist who is approximately 2 months away from turning 8 years.
Okay, yeah, okay. That will be it. Okay. So yeah, talk to you guys later. Oops, sorry about that. Discord, man. Why did it jump over there?
Years old at the end of Volume 4. Now that he has acquired dairy products, he has hopes for the future that he will grow taller. He has realized that he has lost the resistance to solitude that he had developed on Earth, but now he is capable of equipping insects and plants within his body and is constantly followed around by Princess Olivia and the other ghosts who can become invisible, so he does not feel lonely at all. He fears gods as he believes that they are beings that are absolutely superior to him, but that is because of the experience of great failure carved into his mind when he could not strike a single blow back at Rodcourty after dying in Origin. As for the fact that he destroyed the spirit clone of the god of Isupion that resided in Ice Age, he does not think anything more of it other than it was nothing more than a spirit clone. In addition, he is unaware that the pseudo-reincarnations that he is conducting is causing damage to Rodcourty. As Elder and Phaeton are also gods, he knows nothing of their movements other than the fact that they are hostile to him. He does not think much of the fact that he destroyed Kaido Kanata, the first reincarnated individual that he encountered in Lambda. However, he does think that things will be troublesome once other reincarnated individuals arrive. But as he has no way to prevent their arrival, he believes that he should just take care and prepare as much as he can, just as he has been doing up until now. After Heinz and his party defeated Turnisha, the lemurs who were watching them ran out of mana, so he did not monitor them after that. Thus, he is unaware of the fact that Heinz was promoted to S-class or the fact that he gained the status of honorary nobleman that Vandali has been aiming for. Vandali has succeeded in refining new metals, eliminating Turnisha and attracted new citizens to Taylorsheim. Taylorsheim's current population exceeds 4,000, so it is still considered a small city-state in Lambda, but its infrastructure is as complete as any great nation's capital. But Vandali himself isn't aware of this and works like a workaholic. He does not seem to have the sense that he is living luxuriously. During the fourth volume, he was stared in the eyes by the reality that the Orborm kingdom he had so many expectations for was not a dreamlike country but simply another nation, so those expectations rapidly vanished. His eyes have been opened to the Hartner Duchy in particular. Even if the Amid Empire was to invade it, Vandali would do nothing about it. If there wasn't an S-class adventurer in the Hartner Duchy, he would consider trampling over the Empire's army from their flank when both sides were exhausted. He is currently planning to start cultivating a marshland to the south in order to produce more Capricorns and increase production of milk products. He rapidly became more unworldly in the past volume, but he doesn't really mind. In terms of power, if he fights while being careful not to stand out to others, he is in the lower to middle area of C-class. If he uses insect binding technique, plant binding technique, his tongue and threads, dead spirit magic and reveals how much of a monstrosity he is between the upper area of A-class to S-class. And if he uses the Demon King's fragments and fights without holding anything back, he is truly as powerful as an S-class adventurer. Eleonora, she studied combat diligently in order to be of use to Vandali, so her magic-related skills have not developed. But while she is by his side as a servant, she looks more and more like his guardian. She feels apologetic to Dasu every time she is mistakenly assumed to be Vandali's mother, and she feels angry, thinking, I don't want to become a mother. I haven't even had any experience. She also feels depressed, wondering, do I really look that old? Her master is rapidly becoming more otherworldly, but she acknowledged Vandali as the most fearsome master in the world right at the beginning. She does not feel a renewed fear of him. While she feels a sense of closeness with Vandali's new servant, Belmond, she also feels a burning sense of rivalry. She turned 5 people from the first cultivation village including the chief's son, Sabers, into subordinate vampires, but she has never actually had any subordinates of her own before except for Isla and the other vampire zombies, so she is troubled as to how to treat them. Thus, she has currently told them to first undergo a job change and become rank 5 and is now leaving them be. She has polished her skills in swordsmanship and undergone a job change, so she has become a little stronger than she was in the 3rd volume. Braga. From being single, he has now married Marie and the former prostitute Linda, joining the ranks of the successful in life. In addition, their wedding ceremony was held at a time of year known on Earth as Christmas. He has been unexpectedly careful with his family planning. He has already discussed with his wives that once they have a child, they should wait for that child to reach rank 4 before having another. Black goblins have a starting rank of 2, so they lack the strength they need to make a living by hunting in Taylorsheim. Braga is currently spending fulfilling nights with his family while polishing his skills so that he can teach his children his specialized killing techniques once they are born. Name, Braga rank, 6 race, Black Goblin Ninja Adept level, 85 passive skills, Dark Vision status effect resistance, level 4, level up. Enhanced agility, level 4 intuition, level 4, level up. Detect presence, level 5 strengthened attribute values when equipped with ninja equipment, medium active skills, short sword technique, level 6, level up. Throwing, level 4, level up. Silent steps, level 7, level up. Trap, level 3, level up. Dismantling, level 4, level up. Unlocking, level 3, level up. Surpass limits, level 2, new. Unique skills, Human Slayer, level 3, level up. Kasim, an adventurer, a former refugee who fled the Sauron Duchy, and a former villager of the 7th Cultivation Village. He was promoted to D-class, but that qualification has now been invalidated. He formed a party with other boys from the same cultivation village of the same age as him, and he is the shield bearer and leader of the party. Incidentally, if one asks why he aspires to become a shield bearer, the answer is that he was moved by an old hero's tale he once heard, and that hero was known as the person who first invented shield bash. That hero's name has been left in history as the one who invented offensive martial skills at a time when all other shield bearer martial skills were for defense and provoking. Kasim has dreamed of being like that hero. Perhaps because of this dream, he sometimes attacks with his shield while shouting, "Shield bash," despite not being able to use the martial skill. He is currently in his growth phase, so Vandali feels an unstoppable envy for his wonderful body that becomes more robust by the day. However, Kasim feels an unstoppable envy for Vandali, who possesses a harem. Incidentally, his family was a farming family. Zeno, an adventurer, a former refugee who fled the Sauron Duchy, and a former villager of the 7th Cultivation Village. His qualification as an adventurer has now been invalidated. He formed a party with other boys from the same cultivation village of the same age as him, and he is the scout and second leader of the party. Because he has always been small, agile and bad at physical labor, he decided that he would be a scout when he became an adventurer. It seems that he had an aptitude for it, partially because of his calm personality. He is frequently dragged along by Festa's antics. It is a common pattern for him and Kasim to stop Festa together. In truth, he was quite cautious of Vandali when he first met him. But he began treating Vandali normally once he saw his behavior and realized that he was a child despite being expressionless, though he was taken aback to realize that Vandali was the king of the place that he was about to migrate to. Since tasting Taylersheim's delicious food, he realized that he is quite the gluttonous character. Festa, an adventurer, a former refugee who fled the Sauron Duchy, and a former villager of the 7th Cultivation Village. His qualification as an adventurer has now been invalidated. He formed a party with other boys from the same cultivation village of the same age as him, and he acts as the front line for the party and keeps the party's mood up. He is the type of person who gets easily carried away, and is in love with Lena, who is the poster girl of the Jack-of-all-trades store and the sole employee of the Adventurers Guild branch. One might think that he treated Vandali like a very normal child, but he has an unexpectedly sharp, flexible mindset that led him to asking Vandali for training and advice on how to prepare to kill someone. His ability is growing rapidly and his relationship with Lena is progressing as well. It is possible that he has the elements of a protagonist. Dini, also known as the Apple Lady. She was a middle-aged woman who raised her son while making a living selling fruit in the city of Niaki while enduring the abuse from her mother-in-law. Just when her son married a woman and Dini thought it would be her turn, the couple eloped. One could feel sympathy for her situation, but she reaped what she sowed. She stole money from Vandali, saying that the coin he gave her was fake, and when he fled the Adventurers Guild and left the city, she tried to capture him and sell him off, only to die in madness through his scream and mind encroachment. After that, she turned into an undead and fought Heinz and his party and showed wonderful effort by becoming the core of a zombie giant. After that, she was pseudo-reincarnated as an int that Vandali found in the Eclipse King's orchard, which produces iron-hard apple-like fruits. She is currently equipped inside his body. Like Ches Air, she is the type of person who is shining more brightly after death. However, Vandali does not remember what kind of person she was in her previous life. Livia, Taylersheim's first princess. Unlike her younger sister, in her previous life, she had meager ability in battle. When the Mage Shield nation attacked, she escaped to the then friendly nation, the Hartna Duchy, with her warriors guarding her along with the children and elderly who couldn't fight. After that, she was betrayed and burned at the stake, and then her ashes were abandoned in the underground cemetery. After that, her feelings of regret turned her into a ghost, and when she was intending to move on to the next life, Vandali instigated her. Her rank increased and she became a flame ghost and then a blaze ghost after killing Kanata. Her existence is necessary for Vandali's dead spirit magic, and currently she is the most prominent of the spirits haunting him with the exception of Darsa. She is a beautiful woman with an air of elegance, and has a kind, graceful personality. But because she is a titan, she also has the trait of not minding smaller details. Her skin currently has the same dark color that she had when she was alive, but her hair and clothes are made of flames, and below a certain point above her knees, her legs are missing. Her hair and clothes are a part of her, so she can change their shape at will and use them to attack during battle. She normally exposes her skin a lot by having her clothes in the form of a leotard in order to save mana, but the Titans of Taylersheim actually prefer highly exposing clothes other than during cold winters, so there seems to be no deep meaning to this. Incidentally, when she was alive, she wore a long, simple piece of cloth, though when examined closely, it had many revealing slits. As for her bust size, she reigns supreme among the people of Taylersheim in terms of absolute size. However, that is due to the fact that she is a titan who is over 2.5 meters tall. In terms of relative size to her body, her bust is not much different to Terra's or Bastia's. Thus, as a result of discussion, she has been treated as an exception in the bust rankings of Taylersheim, and for some reason, is treated as a special advisor. Name, Livia rank, 5 race, Blaze Ghost level, 65 passive skills, Spirit form, level 6, level up. Mental corruption, level 5 heat manipulation, level 7, level up. Flame nullification materialization, level 5 augmented mana, level 4, level up. active skills, housework, level 5 projectile fire, level 5 possession, level 3 Kaito Kanata, the second person reincarnated from another world into Lambda. He cleared military training at a fairly exceptional level. He used fire attribute magic that was considered almost genius level in origin, as well as his ordinary wind attribute magic. He also had the cheat-like ability Gungna that allowed penetration through target objects. In origin, where things like sniper rifles and infrared scopes exist, he possessed the greatest mission success rate among the bravers. He performed much work, such as rescuing injured people during disasters by passing through the rubble to save them. However, his personality can only be described as that of a lowlife. When he was on Earth, he was nothing more than a common high school student who aspired to becoming special. But after being reincarnated in origin with cheat-like abilities, magic and talent, he was drowned in the feeling of being special. In addition, he thought of the people of origin not as humans like him, but as characters in stories or games. Thinking to enjoy himself more than everyone else, he used his cheat-like ability to stain his hands with crime. He performed deeds such as dealing the final blow to Shin Mari's mother when she was wounded and on the verge of death in order to sell her organs. But he simply thought of this as role-playing a villain in a game. His sense of life being a game was not cured in his third life, it worsened horribly due to the existence of the status and skill systems. And as a result of being reincarnated again, his view on life and death became ambiguous as well, so he seriously thought that if things went badly, he would simply need to hit a reset button. Before being reincarnated in Lambda, Rod Corti requested him to erase Vandally, but Kanata asked to be reincarnated for a fourth life in a world with developed science as a reward. But that irresponsible thought became his enemy, because he used his cheat-like ability that needed to be used to kill the enemy the first time they saw it, and committed reckless acts of violence. Vandally learned how he fought and disarmed him. In the end, he didn't know that Vandally could break souls, so he ended up declaring that he would be back for a rematch, only to have his soul broken to avoid that danger. Beat an aggressive centipede monster who was basking in the sun on a tree branch and performed a spectacular dive after being immediately tamed by Vandally who passed by underneath. He is the #1 creature that has been equipped through insect binding technique. After that, he became an underling of the cemetery bees. He was rank 1 to begin with, but as of the end of Volume 4, he is a rank 4 lance centipede. He has a playful side such as sleeping in Vandally's hair with his head sticking out, but he has become more like his older cemetery bee sisters, who are always building their nests and gathering honey and larvae. Pete looks after the other insects that Vandally equips apparently. He cannot communicate anything specific other than through the clicking sounds he makes with his jaws and wings, so nobody other than Vandally can understand him. Incidentally, he hates water. Name, Pete rank, 4 race, Lance Centipede level, 95 passive skills, hunger resistance, level 2 self-enhancement, following, level 2 venom secretion, neurotoxin, jaws, level 4 active skills, silent steps, level 1 charge, level 4 surpass limits, level 2 gopher, one of the daughters of the Sword King Borkus. She is 213 years old, and evacuated to the Hartner Duchy from Taylorsheim, but she was separated from Princess Livia and her warriors, was told that she would be taken to the place that she would live while taking shelter in the Hartner Duchy and spent 200 years being forced to work. As a result of having received Vandally's age-reversing massage, physically, she is currently about 200 years old. Her personality is that of someone who takes care of others, and when the elderly among the Titan slaves died, she became one of the leaders. She gave birth 3 times in the slave-run mine, but she currently only has 2 sons. After reuniting with Borkus, her parent-child relationship with him was rekindled, but her father has changed in all kinds of ways and she is now struggling to mediate the relationship between her sons and the grandfather that has suddenly appeared in their lives. She admired Livia when she was a child, and had the childish thought of wanting to be like a princess herself, but as a result of the harsh mine work that she was forced to do, she has grown into a strong woman who looks as if she could strangle an ox to death. Vandally acknowledges her as having nice muscles. In fact, she has experienced strangling earthworms that emerged from the ground. All of this is the Hartner family's fault. After returning to Taylorsheim, she didn't feel like doing any mining for a while and her body was feeling unusually good, so she decided to aim for the broken childhood dream of becoming an adventurer. Name, Gopher race, Titan age, 213 years old, physical age 100 years old, title, non-job, skilled miner level, 88 job history, apprentice warrior, slave, apprentice miner, minor passive skills, augmented muscular strength, level 7 augmented endurance, level 7 robust health, level 6 fatigue, hunger resistance, level 6 disease and poison resistance, level 4 self-enhancement, subordination, level 3 active skills, swordsmanship, level 1 mining, level 7 farming, level 1 surpass limits, Level 2 Unarmed Fighting Technique, Level 2 Bedroom Skill, Level 2 Luciliano, an adventurer around 30 years of age who originally worked in the Mage Shield Nation, but moved to the Orborn Kingdom in order to continue his research into the undead. He was caught up in a noble family's conspiracy during the conflict over the succession of the Hartner family and turned into a slave. He was a C-class adventurer, but that qualification was revoked when he became a slave. He was born as the second son in a family of artists, and although he was not gifted with a talent for art, he was blessed with a talent for magic. He intended to make a living using this talent, but he became entranced by research into undead during his time at the Mages Guild. After that, he devoted himself to undead research without breaking the law, but the Mages Guild had ethical problems with this, so they threw him out and essentially excommunicated him. However, he is sturdier than he looks, capable of working as an adventurer to earn enough money for living expenses and funding his research. Incidentally, other than the false charges placed on him when he became a slave, he has never broken the law. He has always skillfully walked around grey areas. While he is an adventurer, rather than accepting extermination requests and clearing dungeons, he often received special requests from people like noblemen to use his life attribute magic that he is adept with, so he has learned the proper etiquette for dealing with noblemen. At the same time, he has become aware of what a refined lifestyle is like. His tastes have grown so specific that he requested a full-course dinner for his final meal. When he encountered Vandali earlier, he felt fear and a danger for his life, but after finding out that Vandali could use undiscovered magic and tame undead, he decided to become Vandali's apprentice. Ever since, he has been spending fulfilling days as an assistant in creating undead while researching whether he can replicate the effects of death attribute magic with his own life attribute magic. However, he acts self-important despite referring to Vandali as master. Vandali doesn't criticize him for this, so this behavior appears to be increasing over time. Belmond, a noble-born vampire who was Turnisha's foolish dog, one of the 5 dogs that were Turnisha's loyal retainers. She originally appeared to be a handsome butler with a monocle, but she turned out to be a female forest monkey-type beast person with Lamia blood mixed in her heritage, her body covered in scars and burns. She was saved by Turnisha's subordinates on the verge of death, and in trying to repay the debt, despite failing several times, she endured the side effects and became a noble-born vampire. However, what awaited her was becoming a watchdog of Turnisha's final hideout and living out tedious stays for thousands of years while enduring Turnisha's outbursts of anger whenever Turnisha visited the hideout and remembered her. During this time, Belmond realized that she was only a watchdog in title, she was nothing more than something to be consumed in emergencies. With her mind in pain, she taught herself the thread-reeling skill that is almost never used in modern society to manipulate metal strings as weapons and acquired the thread user job. She is full of talent. However, her magical qualities remain poor even after becoming a noble-born vampire, perhaps due to having been born as a beast person. She constantly maintains polite speech and behavior, but she is actually quite the Yandir. However, rather than being the type to attack others, she only puts pressure on herself. That hasn't changed after she turned to Vandali's side, but she wants to hold expectations from now on. She is an expert of the thread-reeling skill, even using her tongue in addition to her fingers and toes to manipulate strings, but she was the weakest of the 5 dogs in battle. Also, due to her scars and burns, her feminine body parts are missing, so she is lowest in the bust ranking as well. However, Vandali is intending to perform surgery to transplant all kinds of materials from Turnisha's body, which has been turned into a live dead, to Belmond. Vandali has also told her that he intends to find a monkey-type monster to transplant its tail to replace hers that was chopped off, but Belmond wore a stiff expression. Turnisha, a pure-breed vampire, the one known as the most powerful in battle among the 3 that worship Hihirishukaka, the evil god of joyful life. She contained the Demon King's horns, a fragment of the Demon King Ujuronis, inside her body as a trump card. However, she met a horrible end after being forced to dance in Vandali's rougher plan. She was cornered by Hines, ambushed at the place she escaped to, and her body from her neck downwards was taken, as well as her Demon King's horns and petrifying demon eye. Despite wanting to not be killed by Vandali and being finished by Hines, in the end, Vandali used spirit communication to get information out of her and then broke her soul. She is the one who met the most unfortunate fate in the 4th volume. All of the undead that she created were to satisfy her twisted desires that had become something like an addiction. They didn't have the strength in battle or practicality of use that Vandali desired, but some of them were adjusted and added to the ranks of Talersheim. Yamato is one of them. The rest of them felt too much pain in merely existing and had too many structural problems with their bodies, or simply desired to be in other forms, so they are now waiting to undergo pseudo-reincarnation after Vandali took their spirits out of their bodies. Froto, Lucas's hired spy who disguised himself as a priest of Elder who did missionary work in the cultivation villages. His role was to gather information in each village, and if Vandali hadn't appeared, things would have progressed well. But around the time his plans finished, the Goblin King's pack would have attacked, turning him into goblin food along with all of the cultivation villages. In a way, his life was extended a little thanks to Vandali. He had the potential to be quite successful as a researcher, but unluckily for him, he was hated by his superior and given a useless position, which is why he stubbornly chased success in life. But he met the fate of being infested by a parasite, experienced the sensation of insects crawling around him inside Vandali's body, and then he became food for insects that he could not see. The fact that Vandali never realized who Froto truly was wasn't because Froto was exceptional as a spy, but rather because Vandali was naive. Karkan Lassen, an ordinary knight from a family of knights who served the Hartner family. But he had great ambitions and joined Lord Lucas's faction in order to make them reality. He was put in charge of a plan to destroy the cultivation project started by Lord Belton, but he experienced failure after failure due to Vandali's actions. Despite being ordered to halt the plan, he became impatient and made a reckless move, causing him and his subordinates to be completely defeated. Incidentally, if Vandali hadn't come to the Hartner Duchy, the cultivation villages would have been destroyed by the Goblin King's pack without Karkan needing to do anything. However, if that happened, there is no telling what would have happened to the slave run mine and the city of Niaki. His soul wasn't broken after he died, but he was turned into a printing press column. Belton Hartner, he was born as the second son of the Duke Hartner, but because he is the son of the Duke's wife, he was first in line to succeed the family. His features are not sharp, but they are gentle, the kind of features that the people like. However, he is a conspirator who would use any cruel methods needed to achieve his goals. He is not as extreme as to believe that those who aren't noblemen are not humans, but he believes that it is correct for the commoners to devote themselves to serving the noblemen, and that it is the duty of royalty and nobles to use the commoners in the most efficient way possible. Incidentally, he does not consider those such as refugees to be his people. However, he does not mind adding them to his citizens if they work hard to make a living. Due to the information exposed by Ginap in the scandal, the guild master of the Mages Guild that was supporting him, it became clear that many of his close aides were traitors to humanity. After that, he murdered various people responsible and utilized Heinz to try and restore his image, but he ended up withdrawing from the conflict to succeed the family. But as he is still involved with the management of the duchy as the branch family, he believes that there is a chance by entrusting things to his child, even if things are now impossible for him. Lucas Hartner, he was born as the eldest son of Duke Hartner. But as he is the son of the Duke's concubine, he was second in line to succeed the family. He is a military man with sharp facial features, but at the end of Volume 4, his troubles were only growing as he had to repair the castle, cover up what happened to the Red Wolves Knights Order and build a new fort, causing his hair to turn grey. He took incredible risks at the end of Volume 4, so he feels a great sense of danger. Although he is now fort, causing his hair to turn grey. He took incredible risks at the end of Volume 4, so he feels a great sense of danger. Although he is now building a fort because of that sense of danger, all of his hair would turn white if he learned that this is meaningless against Vandali, who can easily ignore the fort by using dungeon teleportation. If he meets Vandali, he might have claws stuck in his ears and his teeth made to rattle. DLN, this line was explained in Chapter 93. This is a variation on a threat that's commonly used in the Osaka prefecture that's something like, "I'll stick my hand in through your ears and grab your teeth." Pablo Martin, the captain of the Red Wolves Knights Order. He rode out with 100 knights, but this number was an order of magnitude less than the number he required. He is ordinary for a nobleman of Lambda, and he exchanged a one-on-one conversation with Vandali. After being captured alive and humiliated publicly, he became a Luciliano's guinea pig and then turned into a printing press column along with his subordinate Karkan Heinz, one of Vandali's targets for revenge. While working in the Orborm Kingdom, he has acknowledged that Elder's peaceful faction is right and that Veda's races should be accepted, as long as they are harmless to people. After going separate ways from the Green Wind Spear Riley, he moved to the Orborm Kingdom, but he lost the elf spirit mage Marty when his party challenged Zakat's trials. His current party consists of 2 new members in Scout Edgar and the shield bearer female dwarf Deliza, as well as the unarmed fighter Jennifer and elf priestess Diana. He feels guilt over handing Darcy to High Priest Gordon, even if it was an adventurer's request to do so. After much internal conflict, he converted to Elder's peaceful faction, and now he is something of a leader of the faction. In doing so, he began protecting the Damp Ursuline. His objective as an adventurer is the complete clearing of Zakat's trials, but things became complicated and he recently ended up going around trying to exterminate the pure-breed vampires who worship an evil god. He is not a reincarnated champion or the descendant of someone who came from another world. He is a natural-born genius, purely of Lambda origin. As an adventurer, he has an unstoppable sense of justice and idealistic ways of thinking, but he has the ability and charisma to make such ideals possible, or at least make others think that they are possible. He didn't know that Dasa's child survived, but he suspects that the damp boy he saw in the city of Niaki, Vandali, is that child. He also suspects that Eleonora was involved in the incidents that occurred in the Hartner Duchy, so he is looking for her and her master, but he has not realized that her master is Vandali. Judging from his normal speech and actions, one could guess that he hates those who can create undead, but that isn't a hatred specifically directed at Vandali. It is a very normal thought as a believer of Elder. Incidentally, even Elder's peaceful faction treats undead as targets to be exterminated or purified. They do not believe that they can coexist with undead. The act of creating undead is treated as a sin that desecrates life and goes against the laws of life and death. In terms of ability, he is S-class. He has strength in battle rivaling the Mage Shield Nation's hero of 200 years ago, the Divine Spear of Ice Mikhail. In addition to this, he wields a magic sword and his body is fully equipped with legendary class items. Name, Heinz race, human age, 24 years old. Title, Blue Flame Sword, New Vampire Hunter, Sword Saint, One Who Dares Through the Darkness. Job, Sword Saint level, 98. Job history, Apprentice Warrior, Warrior, Swordsman, Magic Swordsman, Magic Warrior, Holy Warrior, Avenger. Attributes, Vitality, 37,295 Mana, 12,505 Strength, 2,829 Agility, 3,510 Stamina, 2,700 Intelligence, 1,097 Passive Skills, Strength and all attribute values, Large Status Effect Resistance, Level 5 All Attributes Resistance, Level 7 Strength and Attack Power while equipped with a sword, Large Mana Cost Reduction, Level 7 Detect Presence, Level 3 Revenge, Zakat's Trials Strength and Attribute Values while equipped with Metal Armor, Large Guidance, Holy Path, Level 1 Active Skills, Radiant God Swordsmanship, Level 4 Holy Light Armor Technique, Level 1 Transcend Limits, Level 7 Transcend Limits, Magic Sword, Level 7 Coordination, Level 9 Light Attribute Magic, Level 6 Life Attribute Magic, Level 6 No Attribute Magic, Level 1 Mana Control, Level 4 Clergyman, Level 2 Family Spirit Descent, Level 9 Etiquette, Level 3 Unique Skills, Undead Killer, Level 10 Elder's Divine Protection, Great Hero's Destiny. Amamiya Hiroto, the leader of the reincarnated individuals in Origin. He has many, more powerful cheat-like abilities compared to the other reincarnated individuals, such as affinity for every attribute. There is no time attribute in Origin and nobody has yet been discovered to possess death attribute mana other than Vandali, so he has an affinity for the 7 other attributes, and casting without incantations. He gathered the reincarnated individuals in Origin together, used his way of thinking to found the Bravers organization and acted to ensure that the reincarnated individuals, who possessed non-magical special abilities that worked on unknown principles, were not ostracized. However, as a result, he dealt the fatal blow to Amamiya Hiroto in Origin without realizing who he was, and ended up sending more of his companions to the battlefield. All of this was a result of the fact that he decided to use the power that he had been given to live this second life correctly after having been hikikomori and a NEET on Earth. In fact, he has saved many lives. However, he overlooked the fact that people could fall to temptation. He failed to realize that Kanata was committing cowardly crimes in secret. Now, he is chasing after Murakami and the 9 other reincarnated individuals who left the Bravers and joined a terrorist group. In his private life, he has married Naru's Narumi and has a child. Incidentally, he didn't know of Amamiya Hiroto's existence until Naru's Narumi approached him after having mistaken him for Amamiya. Of course, he is unaware that he has acquired a cheat-like abilities that were supposed to be Amamiya's. Rickalant, the genie of time and magic. He is a genderless existence without form, and those who worship him depict him symbolically as a trio of beautiful women, old men, young men or boys, so he often takes this form. He was involved in important events in Lambda. During his idle talk with Seru 1, he developed and implemented a system of jobs and skills that supposedly existed in games in another world, interfering with a system created by the Demon King Ujuranis that governed dungeon creation and operation. However, as a god, rather than being one who guides the people, the aspect of him being an ancestor of great mages and researchers is more prominent. His doctrine also consists of many teachings to encourage people to think like researchers and historians. Thus, the churches of this god often become more like research institutes than religious organizations. Also, places such as mages' guilds are always decorated with symbols and statues dedicated to Rickalant. When the Demon King invaded, he summoned Akatsu Haruka, who later became the creation-minded champion. Saw his relationship with her was one where they would give each other inspiration. Rather than being a god and a follower, they were like friends who got along well. During the battle between Alda and Vida that followed, he had his subordinate gods remain neutral as systems without personality, but Ricalant himself, who has a personality and was the leader of those gods, was Vida's ally. Also, it was actually Ricalant who informed Vida of the return of the soul that was Ark and Zakat. In a way, he may be a god who holds more animosity for Alda and Belwood than Vida. Incidentally, the reason he did not try to discuss things with Alda and the others again was because he knew of the poor way that they had treated Vida. If he were to be attacked by Alda in his current state, he would be forced into another long slumber, so he will not take that risk. By the time he came to this decision, Ricalant already no longer considered Alda to be among his companions. He sent a divine message in order to accomplish the goals of Vandali, who was once Ark, but its contents and the identity of the one who received it is unknown. Zeruan, the god of space and creation. He is often depicted in grotesque forms, such as a lion with 4 heads. His personality as a god is trickster-like, and his teachings are often whimsical as well. Thus, he is worshipped by inventors, artists and craftsmen. His statues often decorate workers' guilds alongside those of boatsmen, but there are few churches devoted exclusively to him. As he is the being who governs space, he often gazed at other worlds since ancient times. He spoke to Ricalant of games played in other worlds, leading to the implementation of jobs and skills in Lambda. He was the one who came up with ideas among the original 11 gods, but his erratic thoughts caused many quarrels with Aldo as well. However, he was never stubborn about his ideas, so situations never became too serious. As he was the one who proposed and executed the idea of summoning the champions, he was close with all 7 of them. For this reason alone, he was wounded deeply during the war against the Demon King and fell into a slumber, and by the time he managed to recover enough to regain some semblance of consciousness, he found Lambda in an astounding state. His suggestion had caused the champions' deaths and even their souls were broken. Now that they are in the form of Vandali, he sent a divine message for their sake, but its contents and the identity of the one who received it is unknown. Side Story Chapter 8 Meanwhile, in the western region of the continent, one of the pure-breed vampires who worshipped Hihireushukaka, Turnisha, had been defeated by an adventurer. This was big news that was enough to shake the world. However, the greatest effect of this news was not on the surface of society, but on a society of individuals who squirmed in the darkness, a society that was difficult to even call an underworld. The vampires who worshipped Pararushepe, the evil god of foreign writings, stirred. After the pure-breed vampire who was their leader was defeated by the pure-breed vampires who worshipped Hihireushukaka, they left the Barngaya continent and had survived up until now by remaining hidden. However, they had spent a long time gathering strength. Now, they had decided that Turnisha's death, the disappearance of one of their bitter enemies, was a good opportunity to restore their status. It would be particularly convenient to establish a position in the Hartner Duchy of the Orborm Kingdom and a part of the Amid Empire, where an empty space had opened with Turnisha's death. But the 5 colored blades were working in the Orborm Kingdom, led by the new S-class adventurer Hines. With that being the case, the vampires made moves into Kalahad, a maritime vassal nation of the Amid Empire to its south. But the Storm of Tyranny, the party led by Schneider, the only S-class adventurer in the western region of the continent, was working there. However, they hadn't performed any major deeds recently, and the party was led by someone who, despite being an S-class adventurer, was a depraved man who had a weakness for money, alcohol and, most of all, women. The vampires thought that if they crushed each member individually, they could be victorious. After finding out that one of the Storm of Tyranny's members was Zed the pure-breed vampire Zorkodrio, they felt certain that they could win. Gwen, the leader of the vampires, had heard from his previous master that Zorkodrio had once been defeated in ancient times. According to that story, Zorkodrio was the man with the least talent in magic and combat among the pure-breed vampires. According to that story, even during the battle between Alda and Vida, Zorkodrio had been the first one to fall at the front lines. It was said that there were around 100 pure-breed vampires. With 100 of them, naturally, some of them would turn out to be failures. Zorkodrio was one of those failures, the weakest pure-breed vampire. Gwen decided that this was the case after remembering his former master's words. He decided that the first step of ruling the darkness of the Barngaya continent would be to make a casualty of this pure-breed vampire, even if he was a failure, in order to show his power and the power of his followers. The Storm of Tyranny cooperated with Gwen's plans almost too quickly, separating themselves from one another. Gwen himself, along with his elite subordinates, surrounded Zorkodrio and attacked. How frail! Several vampire corpses littered the plain, which lay in waste as if a storm or hurricane had swept through. Impossible. The elite vampires that I raised myself, in a single instant they were all at least of count status, rank 10 and above. Gyun shouted. He was standing stock still in the middle of the plain, simply shuddering at the monster of muscle before him. Barely a minute ago, there had been a slim, gentleman-like person between the prime of his life and middle age standing there. But now there was a monster covered in steel-like muscles. You are still young, but have your eyes aged too much? Asked Zed, who now looked like a completely different organism, never mind a different person. I broke the ones you raised in a matter of seconds. Now then, it is your turn next. It seemed that Gyun still hadn't accepted reality. Do not fool yourself. There is no chance that I, Gyun-sama, who serves the evil god of foreign writings, would be defeated by one such as you. Gyun, who had reached the status of Vampire Emperor, used the chant revocation skill to cast fire, wind and earth attribute attacks in rapid succession. Zed brushed all of these aside with his overwhelming physical strength. He swung his arm swiftly to extinguish the flames, and the blade of air and spear made of minerals simply bounced off his pectoral muscles and abdominal muscles. The one who is fooling himself is you rotten youngster. Zed closed the distance between himself and Gyun in a single instant, the ground crushed and broken beneath his feet. During the moment where the defensive spell that Gyun had cast in reflex was broken, he realized the true meaning of his former purebreed vampire master's words. Zed had the least talent in magic and combat among the purebreed vampires, but he made up for that with overwhelming physical strength. During the battle between Alda and Vida, he fought further at the front and more fiercely than anyone else with this physical strength, and after enduring more attacks than anyone else, he was the first to fall. Take this. Violent burst lightning. As Zed began vibrating at such high speeds that his body began to blur, bolts of lightning erupted furiously from him. Gyun's mithril armor, which was supposed to withstand even the magic of master mages, was pierced by the lightning and his heart was incinerated. He crumbled and fell, along with his ambitions. Zed, who was releasing an acrid, ionic-smelling stench, made sure that Gyun had stopped moving and then exhaled. Fusheraru, just like the electric eels that inhabit Earth that have lightning coursing through their bodies without using mana, this was my muscle technique's move that produces lightning with nothing but the vibration of my muscles. This is the power of science that was passed down by Solder, the champion chosen by Peria, the goddess of water and knowledge. No, that's not completely science, said Listener, who was standing there before Zed knew it. Solder would cry if she heard that. She didn't deal with macho men well, either. Phew. Listener don't know. How rude of me, said Zed, hastily restoring his appearance. He wore clothes that were magic items that could be restored by channeling mana through them, no matter how badly they were torn, allowing him to return to his true muscular appearance at any time without hesitation. What about Schneider Dono and the others? He asked. They've already finished and are heading back, said Listener. Unlike your situation, we couldn't resolve it by just hitting them a few times, so it was a little troublesome, though. The vampires had tried to persuade Schneider with a female slave's tears. Dalton, the spiritual mage with a mohawk who was concealing the fact that he was a dark elf, had been challenged to a drinking contest while a dwarf dancer Merdin had been challenged to a dancing contest. Listener had been busy making preparations for their next job with the guild master of the Adventurers Guild. It seemed that Gyun and his followers had used methods other than battle against everyone but Zed. They had been unexpectedly wise. I see. However, it seems that I have caused trouble for everyone, said Zed. It's not really your fault, is it, Zed? Said Listener. But this incident was caused by my brethren, even if they have strayed from the path, Zed continued as he gathered and buried the corpses of Gyun and his subordinates. In modern society, Gyun and his subordinates were monsters who worshipped an evil god, but Zed remembered the times when the pure-breed vampire who was Gyun's parent was a believer of Vida. They had been comrades in arms in the battle against the Demon King, Zed's brethren who had felt the goddess's kindness and become vampires alongside him. As they showed no signs of reforming, Zed hadn't been able to allow them to escape, but he wanted to at least bury them as a final act of compassion. If you're going to talk like that, then they're children of my old companion, too. Listener, who was the incarnation of Juris a pipe, had fought for Vida against Alda alongside Zed before he was sealed, as well as Gyun's master. Zed had been defeated 100,000 years ago and sealed until recently, while Listener had used the Demon King's Circle of Transmigration system to be reborn. Turnisha and Gun's master had been defeated but managed to survive. However, in the end, they had fallen as low as to become hounds for wicked gods. "Well, I'm sure those people had struggles of their own," said a listener. "There is no telling what would have become of us if we had taken one wrong step as well," Zed agreed. The two of them, who were now in a somewhat dreary mood, completed the graves with blank gravestones and turned around to go back to the city. "Ouch!" Listener suddenly raised a hand to her head. "What is the matter?" Listener don't know. "Was it an enemy attack?" Zed began pumping up the muscles in his body once more. "No, it's not an enemy," Listener said, frowning. "This is a divine message. That Triculant, why did he push himself so hard? And feeling like I have a hangover when I haven't had anything to drink is the worst, too." Guberman, who had finished moving his prized collection to a base that Turnisha hadn't known about, let out a heavy, weary sigh. "Good grief, that half-vampire youngster, he torments us to no end." After those events, after Vandali vanished into the dungeon from Turnisha's hideout, Guberman and Berkine had entered the dungeon to kill him together. However, the dungeon had been nothing more than a single floor with few rooms, and Vandali was nowhere to be found in any of them. There were rare cases where the stairway leading to the next floor was cleverly hidden, so he and Berkine searched for a while in case this was one of those dungeons, but such a trick wasn't present in this dungeon, either. It was likely that Vandali had used time attribute magic or a magic item to teleport away from the dungeon. After coming to this conclusion, Guberman and Berkine had been left with no choice but to leave the dungeon behind. And then they moved their bases with great haste. Turnisha had died, but Guberman and Berkine knew that Vandali seemed to be a spiritualist. There was no guarantee that Turnisha's spirit wouldn't sell them out to Vandali. They had accompanied Turnisha for over 100,000 years, but they had been the ones to try to betray that person who had been their companion since the age of the gods, so it was difficult to imagine that she would try and keep them safe now. Curses, what are we to do now? Even if I cooperate with Berkine, wait. Can I trust him? Berkine was a sworn friend of 100,000 years, who worshipped the same evil god. However, was it not he who had suggested to Guberman the plan of turning Turnisha, another such sworn friend, into his puppet? And now that he had failed, who was to say that he would not try to do the same thing to Guberman? Berkine said that if he and I join forces, we can kill that youngster. Join forces? Could it be that that rascal intends to turn me into his puppet next? It was possibly Guberman's turn to be the target of what they had attempted to do to Turnisha. And so, the cooperative system between the pure-breed vampires who worshipped Hiroshukaka, the evil god of joyful life, began to crumble. Marzukzul von Belwood Amid, the emperor of the Amid Empire who had just finished his various daily duties, was surprised to hear this report, although the expression on his beautiful half-elf face didn't change. The surprise he felt might have been greater than that he had felt when he heard the news of the expedition army of 6,000 returning as undead. "That is not a metaphorical expression, is it?" he asked. "No," said the head of the Amid Empire's secret intelligence. "According to the spies, the Hartner Duchy's castle has physically tilted over. I see. Now that the Amid Empire had occupied the Sauron Duchy, new lands had become adjacent to the Empire, and the Hartner Duchy was one of them. The movements of the Hartner Duchy were important affairs for the Empire. Thus, he had been increasing the number of hidden agents in the Duchy for a while, but the report that the castle had physically tilted over was difficult to believe. If it were a fort adjacent to a devil's nest, it could have been explained, but it was unheard of for a castle in the safest place, the capital city of a nation, to tilt over. At the very least, it was a historically unusual event. The report continued. Also, it seems that the guild master of Nine Lands Mages Guild, Kinup, turned out to be working with pure-breed vampires. That is interesting information, but how did you find this out? Asked Marzukzul. I do not believe this is something that can be discovered by secret agents alone. That is, for some unknown reason, he and his subordinates took the proof to consulates from other duchies and confessed everything, said the head of intelligence. This is getting more and more difficult to believe, said Marzukzul, pressing a hand to his forehead. But he had heard this information confirmed by numerous sources, so it didn't seem to be false information or an untrue rumor. Get your hands on the information that the guildmaster confessed, immediately. Continuing on from last time, this is our chance to squeeze out the pus. As for the incident of the castle tilting over, leave it be for now. We will make the successful beggars take measures before they make too much noise. The Amid Empire had defeated and occupied the Sauron Duchy, but it wasn't as if they hadn't expended anything to do so. Of course, the Empire couldn't simply kill all of the Sauron Duchy's inhabitants, so magistrates needed to be sent to cities and village chiefs needed to be replaced in order to rule the people while keeping them suppressed. But the inhabitants of the duchy that had long fought on the front lines against the Empire wouldn't wag their tails so easily. More time was needed to discipline them. There were already reports that the surviving knights and soldiers were forming a resistance. If the Empire let its guard down, the carpet would be swept from under its feet. If the Empire were to try and invade the Hartner Duchy in such a state, the extended supply lines and understaffed military bases within the Sauron Duchy would be exposed to the resistance. And even if it were possible to assault the Hartner Duchy and occupy it, the surface area adjacent to the rest of the Orborn Kingdom's duchies would only increase. The men of the Mage Shield Nation excelled in defensive battles, but even if they were positioned there, it wasn't as if forts and sturdy walls would simply grow out of nowhere, so they would not be able to defend everywhere at once. In other words, the moment the Amid Empire took this opportunity to invade the Hartner Duchy, it would be defeated no matter how things played out. A few with a keen strategic eye would be able to realize this, but there were some noblemen who had failed to achieve anything in the previous war, whose eyes were clouded by their envy for the ones who gained new lands and higher court ranks, though some of them had poor eyes to begin with. "I will take your concerns into account," said the head of intelligence. "Don't pay any attention to them," said Marzuxel. "People are always a mixture of the good and the bad. For every great person, there are 10 more fools mixed in with them. And it was the duty of the ones in higher positions to use those people well." Marzuxel had the head of intelligence leave and quickly summoned the Marshal, General Affairs Minister and the Finance Minister one after another to hear their reports and give them orders. After that, there were reports of the numerous incidents that had occurred in the Hartner Duchy, but although Marzuxel was interested in them, he was not surprised. Even when he heard that a dungeon had appeared near a city and caused a large monster rampage, or when he heard that Veda's religion was unexpectedly spreading in the farming villages. The sudden appearance of a dungeon was something like a natural disaster, and now that the Hartner Duchy had become the front line in the battle against the Amid Empire, he didn't consider it unusual that Veda's religion was spreading in an act of resistance. While it was valuable information, it was also amusement for the busy Marzuxel. It was similar to reading a weekly magazine on Earth. However, when the intelligence agency reported yet another piece of information that should have ended in mere amusement, Marzuxel raised his eyebrows. "Is that true?" he asked. The report he had heard was that the ghouls of the Devil's Nests in the Hartner Duchy could no longer be hunted. The high-ranking intelligence worker was surprised at being asked this question in return, but he quickly nodded. "I've been had," Marzuxel thought as he scowled. To think that he would move so quickly, and on that side of the mountain range tell all of our hidden agents to investigate everything they can about the damper by the name of Vandali, no matter how trivial, he ordered. Around a month afterwards, Marzuxel's hidden agents reported that the slave-run mine in the Hartner Duchy had collapsed, that a damp named Vandali had been treated as a saint in the cultivation villages that had been visited during the investigation, and that Vandali had appeared in the Adventurers Guild in the city of Niaki. Marzuxel couldn't completely read Vandali's intents and motives, but he was certain that Vandali had been involved in all of the incidents that had occurred in the Hartner Duchy. He informed all of his hidden agents stationed at places adjacent to the boundary mountain range of Vandali's name and appearance, and ordered them to keep an eye out for him. By the time that order reached them, the cultivation villages had already mysteriously disappeared, and it was announced that Lord Lucas's Red Wolf Knights Order had sacrificed themselves to defeat dangerous monsters. Incidentally, later on, Marzuxel let out a grand sigh upon hearing that Heinz had exterminated the pure-breed vampire Turnisha, been promoted to S-class and reached the status honorary nobleman. Without knowing where the rest of her body went, he crushed her head without hesitation. And there are still 2 heads left. And though honorary, he is an earl. Both he and Vandali are troublesome. Schneider, who had been sleeping on his stomach with mountains of dried herbs stacked in mounds on his back and set on fire, raised an eyebrow as listener returned and spoke to him. "A divine message from Rickelant. Were you a goddess of the time attribute?" Schneider asked her. Normally, divine messages were things that gods sent to their believers or followers. Listener herself had once explained to Schneider that this pattern didn't originate from simple hierarchical relationships, but because divine messages needed to utilize a mental connection between the target and the god. "No," said listener. "Things are strangely different from when I was on the Demon King's side, but I'm now a goddess of the life attribute. So Rickland has no connection to me, But despite being reincarnated, I am still a goddess, so it's possible for him to communicate with me through a divine message. Rickland had really pushed himself. He felt pain as great as if his bones were being gouged out. Even Listener had experienced a violent headache that would have caused a normal person to lose consciousness out of shock. Show, what's it bout? Dalton's speech had become inarticulate as a result of his drinking contest. He's asking, so, what's it about? Said Merdin, translating for him. He said he wants me to pass a message on to Xantak, said Listener. Xantak? Not Xantasan or Uncle Zazatak, but Xantak-sama? Isn't that a god? Merdin exclaimed. Merdin, why are you so surprised? The Listener-chan in front of your eyes is a goddess, too, you know? Dalton pointed out. I don't want to be told that by a drunken elf, said Merdin. In fact, Xantak-sama, whom us dwarves worship as our god ancestor, is on a different level, isn't he? Well, you're right, but you know. But it was that god of war who fought head-on against Bellwood and the other champions, said Listener. It was a defensive battle for me, Zed added. Xantak, who had fused with evil gods, had participated in the battle between Vida and Alda, standing on the side of Vida against Farmount Gold, the champion that he had chosen himself. But this knowledge hadn't remained in the legends and myths of human society. It was a piece of historical truth that Schneider and his party had learned from Listener and Zed. But we don't know where he went after that, do we? How are we supposed to pass on this message? Schneider asked. That is in a place where my eyes cannot see, said Listener. What's that supposed to mean? Asked Dalton. He said, what's that supposed to mean? Said Merdin, translating. While everyone fell into deep thought, Schneider instinctively came to an understanding of what those words meant. In other words, it's somewhere there's no mages guilds that worship Rickland, a city-country continent. All right, shall we go to the Dark Continent? And so began the Storm of Tyranny's next adventure. By the way, what are you doing? Oh, this is called moxibustion. It's a therapy that was written in old books. No, I know that. But I'm asking why you're doing something like that. Well, I was getting the feeling that I get tired easily these days. I wanted to test it out. You have the all attributes resistance skill, so what effect are you expecting moxibustion to have on you, exactly? Side Story Chapter 9, Everyday Life in Taylorshire. The final goblin barbarian fell with an ear-piercing shriek. We won, whispered Cassim, after making sure that the enemy was no longer moving and that there were no more enemies. Yeah, we won. With just us, said Festa. Against 4 of them at once, too, Zeno added. The 3 adventurers inhaled, full of emotion. And then they screamed. We did. We did. We did with just the 3 of you us? Alright, but let's be quiet. We're still in a dungeon, after all. That's right. Zeno, you're always calm, huh? What would you do with a scout that isn't calm? The 3 of them calmed down and quickly checked whether the goblin barbarian corpses had any magic stones or not before proceeding. After returning from Garen's Valley to the surface, Cassim and his friends looked at their thin metal plates that resembled guild cards while carrying the magic stones and materials back. These dungeon cards are pretty handy, huh? Vandali had inspected the magic item in the Cultivation Village's branch of the Adventurers Guild that inputted information into guild cards, and reconstructed the machine left in Taylorshime's Adventurers Guild to issue these. These cards, which were made of dark copper, Vandali's blood and the blood of the owners, had the function of allowing their owners to teleport within dungeons, with some conditions. Apparently Vandali wanted to make it so that we can teleport between dungeons, but this is convenient enough. The cards only allow teleportation to the entrance of floors that the card's owner has reached before, but I suppose that's normal. That's not normal. Using either the devices that were created by first-rate alchemists that are installed in certain dungeons or climbing all of the stairs, is the normal way to move around. Dungeons were nests for dangerous monsters, but at the same time, they were treasure houses of resources. However, in order to use those resources, most dungeons required adventurers to carry them out on their backs. Unless one had an item box or one of its inferior counterparts, which was still rare and valuable, had a companion capable of using space attribute magic, or the dungeon's layout allowed carriages or wagons to be brought inside, only what could be carried out by hand could be taken out of the dungeon. And considering that monsters could attack on the way, one could not carry as much as physically possible. But these dungeon guards made things quite a lot easier. If one reached the target floor once, they would be able to teleport, not needing to spend any stamina getting the next time. In addition, by reaching the stairs, one could return to the surface in an instant. Of course, at no time or stamina cost. Depending on what needed to be done, it was even possible to simply hunt monsters near the stairs, return to the stairs when enough materials were gathered, return to the surface, leave the materials there and go back into the dungeon. Dungeons are on another level after all. Strong monsters come out endlessly, so we can earn tons of experience points. Yeah? The most we had around the cultivation village was rank 2 monsters. This was the reason that the existence of dungeons was important to amateur adventurers like Kasim and his friends. They could encounter monsters more frequently than in ordinary devil's nests. The dungeons were treasure troves of experience points as long as they had the ability to defeat the monsters. We would have found it difficult to reach the bottom floor of Garen's Valley if we were just as we'd been when we lived in the cultivation village, though, said Zeno. They had defeated a group of goblin barbarians without suffering any injuries. Though their abilities had indeed grown, the main reasons were because their attribute values had increased explosively under the effects of Vandal's strength and followers' skill, and because their equipment had improved significantly. Because they were Vandal's friends, Kasim and his party had not received any special, high-power equipment. Their weapons and armor had started showing their age in the battle against the Red Wolves Knights Order, so they had simply borrowed the cheapest of the commonly used beginner's equipment in Talersheim. That cheap beginner's equipment was still far more powerful than the poor quality items they had equipped themselves with before. However, that's true, Kasim agreed, looking at the adamantite shield and armor he was equipped with now. I might have been injured if I was using my old shield and armor. His new equipment was far superior in defensive ability to the cast bronze shield and armor that had been made by pouring molten metal into molds, and even slightly lighter. Yeah, the Chisan would have been really mad if we told him we wanted cast metal items, said Festa. He'd say, I only make forged arms. Festa's sword was another item forged by Daitara. It was a cheap item, so it was far less sharp and solid than the products that Daitara put all of his effort into. However, if Festa were to call it a cheap item in the Adventurers Guild in the city of Niaki, the adventurers of the same age would disagree, simply assuming that Festa was a rich person. Ah, Tera-san and the others, they're good people, but everyone's sense is a little off, said Zeno. His equipment had been plainly upgraded as well. He had been handed down leftover items that intermediate-level adventurers would use habitually. Talersheim was isolated from the outside world, so external economics and information had no influence here. One step outside the city would expose one to rank 3 monsters, ferocious raptors with sharp fangs and claws, and monsters more powerful than them. Being able to survive in such an environment was considered a minimum requirement. Thus, there was no point in creating the kind of cheap items that were commonly used in normal cities. Well, it's not all good things. That's true. The 3 adventurers entered the former ruins of the Adventurers Guild, which had been completely renovated into a trading post with a sign hanging down. The inside was exactly the same as a real Adventurers Guild. A purchase, is it? That's 5,000 lunas. An exchange for a mayonnaise, ketchup and syrup set? Excuse me, we're sold out of cream. The only difference was, perhaps, that rewards could be paid in products other than money. They're sold out of cream? Said Kasim. The wasabi mayonnaise hasn't come in yet? Asked Festa. The two of them seemed sad. You guys, we decided that we'd be paid in money today, didn't we? Said Zeno, lightly poking them in the back of their heads. The currency known as the Luna circulated in Talersheim, but there were still not many different kinds of stores. Thus, there were still many who traded in goods rather than money. Oh yeah, said Festa, cheering up again. He gave a bright smile as he got in line and called out to the girl at the counter. Lena, we're back. Welcome to the trading post, said Lena. Are you here to be paid? Or for a trade? Oi, Lena, it's me, said Festa. Are you here to be paid? Or for a trade? Lena repeated. Oi, Lena? The receptionist at the counter, Lena, who had been an irregular employee at the 7th Cultivation Village's Adventurers Guild, gave a businesslike smile to her lover, Festa. But her smile was gradually growing stiffer and stiffer. Lena? I'm trying to tell you, I'm working now. She shouted. I'm glad you're not injured. I was worried. I love you. If you're satisfied with that, hurry and hand over your materials and choose whether you want money or goods in payment. Okay. Festa hastily put the materials he was carrying onto the counter. Kasim and Zeno gestured to Lena in apology behind him. Incidentally, this was how things normally went for Fester and Lena. She already had a firm control over him, but that was probably perfectly fine for Fester. Only magic stones other than the proof of extermination, huh? Ah, you did it, didn't you? You achieved your goal of defeating goblin barbarians with just the three of you, said Lena. Okay, this comes out to 500 lunas in total. 500 lunas, Fester murmured. It's not like I appraised it for lower because I'm angry, but those are the market prices, said Lena. The extermination rewards and magic stones of the monsters that Kasim's party had hunted would have been worth over 2,000 bombs at an adventurer's guild in the Hartner Duchy. However, they were only worth 500 lunas in Talersheim. This was because there were quality undead titan and ghoul explorers. They were not registered at the Adventurers Guild but were doing essentially the same thing, so this term suddenly started to be used, and because the frequency of encountering monsters in Talersheim's surroundings and dungeons was high. And Vandal's existence was the reason for those. Rank 4 monsters appeared frequently, and over 2,000 explorers hunted them habitually. Thus, it was only inevitable that the reward for exterminating monsters was lower than the outside world. In addition, the entire city's magic items were powered by Vandal's strange mana, so the demand for magic stones was lower than in the outside world as well. Until the people of the cultivation villages came, most of Talersheim's citizens had possessed fighting abilities on the level of class adventurers, but this meant that if one wanted to make a living as an explorer, they needed to be able to fight at least as well as a class adventurer. It's quite harsh here, said Kasim. Well, we just need to endure until we grow stronger, said Fester. Let's do our best. You're right. Our levels have actually increased, too, said Zeno. Please do your best, said Lena. I don't mind being a working couple, but I don't intend to support Fester on my own. After receiving their payment, Kasim and his party arranged plans to eat together with Lena once her working hours were over and then left the trading post. Having a light snack of food from the cart, they headed for a bathhouse in order to wash away the sweat they had worked up in the dungeon. A little while ago, I said it was harsh, but if you asked me to go back outside of this place, I'd refuse, said Kasim. Me too, Fester agreed immediately. I'd definitely refuse as well, said Zeno. Their half-eaten food from the cart was still in their hands. Kasim had a hot dog, while Fester and Zeno had hamburgers. With a single bite, their mouths would be filled with meat juice and sauce. They would feel the pleasant texture of lettuce and chopped onions against their teeth, and the soft, fluffy bread absorbed all of it perfectly, not remaining inside their mouths for very long. Once all of that was swallowed, they would want a second mouthful. These were being sold for 5 lunas each. And they were not being sold by a well-known chef running a hidden food stall, but a normal stall that attracted explorers going in and out of the trading post. The one making them was a former villager of the cultivation villages, just like Kasim and his friends. How much would you have to pay to eat something this delicious in the city of Nierki, I wonder? Said Kasim. White bread, meat, fresh vegetables and sauce, about 10 bombs. There was that time our instructor treated us to fried orc meat, remember? That was about 10 bombs, apparently. And this bread is clearly softer than the bread they sell in the city, too. So about 20 bombs? The three of them looked down at the snacks in their hands again. Hot dogs, lengths of meat called sausages that had been created through unknown technology, sandwiched in fluffy bread. Hamburgers that were so full of meat juice that it was difficult to imagine they were simply made of minced meat shaped into patties, along with the onions, lettuce and ketchup to give it an incredible texture. Such food was only 5 lunas. The different currencies weren't worth exactly the same, but the food that could be purchased in the city of Nierki for 5 bombs was sandwiches with brown bread and dried meat. With an unidentified sauce. Dried vegetables and bean sauce. With a few pieces of meat in there, if you're lucky. A large helping of mixed rice. The last item that Zeno mentioned, mixed rice, was something made when the stall owner stir-fried whatever ingredients he had acquired cheaply on that day with southern rice. The ingredients could be meat or fish depending on the day, so even when buying it from the same stall, they could be a hit or a miss. The selling point was its quantity and cheap price. Rather than having the feasts in their hands turn into that kind of food, it was perhaps best to accept small changes with a laugh. By the way, why are these called hot dogs? Isn't it because they're made of hellhound meat? Is hellhound meat edible? No, isn't it just because that was the name used for it in the other world? Just like taiyaki and Cuban sandwiches. Following this conversation, the three finished their snacks and entered the bathhouse. Incidentally, the number of non-Titan citizens had increased, so there were human-sized baths as well. Undead Titans sometimes decided to use them for half-body baths, however. "We've come to take a dip, father-in-law San," said Festa. "I've told you, it's too early to be calling me that," shouted the former Royarji of the Jack-of-all-trades store, Lena's father. In Talersheim, that had no interactions with other cities and where all citizens had been provided houses, there was no need for inns. Vandali had offered him a civil official position, but the Oyaji had turned him down, saying that official work didn't suit him, so he was now working in this bathhouse. It seemed that he intended to save money and have another business up and running by the time Talersheim began doing trade with other cities. The three adventurers paid the entrance fee, took off their clothes and entered the baths. Incidentally, this bathhouse was gender segregated. Mixed-gender bathhouses were places for meetings between men and women, so Festa wouldn't go to those. "For baths are great, huh?" said Kasim, and the other two quickly agreed. The three of them had never had baths with hot water before coming to Talersheim. There hadn't been any convenient hot springs in the or on Duchy or in the cultivation villages, and they hadn't been able to afford to heat up large quantities of water. In modern-day Japan on Earth, people would heat water freely, but in Lambda, one couldn't heat water without gathering firewood, using expensive magic items or learning fire attribute magic. Even if they wanted to use firewood, wood didn't burn easily unless it was dried first. This would take time and effort. It wasn't something that could be done every day just to have a bath. But hot baths could be easily had in Talersheim for a cheap price. More recently, the boilers had been powered by flame ghosts rather than fuel, so it was gentle on the environment as well. The ghosts could receive a considerable salary just for remaining still, so it was apparently a popular part-time job. And soap is cheap, too. I once saw a bar of soap in the city of Niki on sale for 100 bombs, but they're only 3 lunas here. They're made from monster fat, if I recall. The cheapest ones are. The ones made from fruit are more expensive, but they smell better. Girls are happy when they get them as presents. Suddenly, a ghoul man called out to the three of them with a voice that sounded like a growl. "Ah, Boden-san." "Hello," said Festa. It seemed that the ghoul named Boden was an explorer like Kasim and his friends, and they had seen each other before. "Festa, I'm Boden," said the ghoul. "Eh? Ah, I'm sorry." While Festa had indeed seen him before, it seemed that he had mistaken him for another ghoul. But this probably couldn't be helped. Ghoul men had the faces of lions that were largely different in structure from human so they were difficult to tell apart unless one was used to seeing them. It was even more difficult in the bathhouses, where they were completely nude. "By the way, Barden-san, please tell us more about this soap," said Kasim. "How much is it worth?" asked Zeno. Kasim and Zeno, who experienced the loneliness of being single every day, were now engrossed in the conversation, so Barden didn't really seem to mind having been mistaken for someone else. Around the time Kasim and Zeno came to the conclusion that the honey soap that had started being sold recently might be a good item to give as presents, despite not having anyone to give presents to, Barden got out of the bath and left. Other than Barden, there were also Anubises, black goblins, Orcuses and undead titans washing their sweat away in this bathhouse, although one particular group among these didn't sweat at all. Everyone from the cultivation villages had been surprised when they first moved to Talersheim, but they soon became accustomed to it. There was a sense of unity provided by the strength and followers' skill, but there was also the fact that conversation with these races went surprisingly well. There had even been an event to encourage interaction between the old inhabitants and the new ones. The biggest trouble that had occurred was a fight breaking out. There weren't any fierce hostilities developing. Perhaps it was a good thing that the cultivation villages had been a mishmash of refugees of multiple races. And there was a single line that satisfied everyone when it came to their strange neighbors: everyone is normal compared to Vandali. Vandali himself would probably have been unhappy to hear this, however. But there are some parts about him that are just like a normal child, right? Yeah, it's easy to tell what he's thinking. If Pablo Martin had heard these words while he was still alive, he would have questioned their sanity. But Kasim and his friends were completely serious. Vandali was expressionless and his voice was flat-toned, but if one looked at places other than his face, it was unexpectedly easy to tell what he was thinking. He expressed emotions such as disturbance and surprise through his arms and legs, as well as his hair that had recently become able to move freely. He was probably using parts of his body other than his face to express his emotions because he was aware that his own expression and voice never changed. When he was nervous, he would stop expressing any emotion at all, so that in itself was easy to understand. Kasim and his friends had realized this since they were still living in the cultivation village, so it was likely natural for them to treat Vandali normally. If Vandali were to hear this, he would quite be shocked upon objectively realizing that his mental age had regressed. However, Vandali was almost 8 years old. Including the time that he had spent on Earth and in Origin, he was in his mid-40s, approaching late middle age. And it seems that he gets depressed when people call him scary or monstrosity, said Kasim. Let's make sure we don't act scared of him. Kasim, weren't you the one who screamed after unexpectedly meeting Vandali in a bathhouse the other day? Zeno pointed out. No, that was it, can't be helped, right? You guys were scared as well. One time, while Kasim was submerged in the bath, Vandali, who had actually entered the bath earlier with his head submerged, having not learned from last time, had silently risen up right next to Kasim. He had apparently had his eyes closed while submerged and simply come up to breathe, but it was still surprising for Kasim nonetheless. Kasim couldn't be blamed for saying that his reaction couldn't be helped. Well, I suppose you're right. I didn't notice him either, even though I have the detect presence skill. Remembering this memory that hurt his pride as a scout, Zeno began to feel depressed. Either way, let's make sure we don't say anything like, scary, about him. You're right. And so the three of them decided on how they would treat their friend, who was also the king of Talersheim. It was now dusk, and the sunlight reflected by the mercury mirrors had weakened. The three of them, who were heading towards the place where they'd agreed to meet Lena, had their interest drawn by a crowd that had gathered near where they were passing by. Over a dozen children were playing on a playground that had been built on a space of open ground. Kasim and his friends were accustomed to seeing this. On Earth, the sight of healthy children playing on the typical sandboxes, slides, jungle gyms and iron bars might bring a smile to one's face. However, the same could not be said for the sight of a group of children all with the same face playing on a playground, moving silently without letting out a single laugh, looking as empty as dolls. Scary Kasim and his friends whispered. At the same time, Vandali noticed them. Oh, what a coincidence. At that moment, the outlines of the countless Vandalias faded and gathered together at the one physical Vandali. Fortunately, it seemed that he hadn't heard what Kasim and his friends had whispered. What were you doing? Kasim asked. I built a park for people to relax and children to play at, so I was just testing whether there were any problems with the play equipment I installed, Vandali replied. Talersheim had never had a park to begin with, so it seemed that Vandali had said, I'm just going to move these a little to the side, dismantled and rebuilt the buildings in their new locations and used the newly made space to build a park. And he had apparently been testing the playground equipment he had made by changing the shapes of materials using Golem transmutation himself. A park, are there places like this in big cities? Zeno asked. Who knows? There weren't any in Nineland. But it's convenient to have places like this, said Vandali. So that's how it is. Kasim and the others couldn't really understand the reason for making the effort of building a park or see its value, but Vandali had simply thought it would be nice to have one, so he couldn't really give a detailed explanation, either. Parks had all kinds of benefits, being places where children could play within their parents' sight, where the parents could interact with each other and where various recreational activities could be held. So, have you finished inspecting it? Fester asked. Yes, said Vandali. Then how about having an early dinner with us? We're going to go and meet Lena now, said Fester. If you don't mind eating at the royal castle, Vandali replied. I'm planning to use my new cookware to try and make new dishes today. Are you serious? Lucky us. Kasim exclaimed. So, what are you making? Zeno asked. Curry and naan. Eh? Curry and what? I'm making naan. It seemed that Vandali had built a tandoori oven and was intending to make Indian curry before Eastern curry. I said I would make it when Fester and Lena got married, Vandali explained. By the way, we've almost finished completing the first stage of information gathering, so the cream expedition is going to start in earnest. What are you three planning to do? Ah, that. Lizardman, we still want to train ourselves more. Discussing the new dish that Vandali was planning to make and the upcoming expedition, the four of them smiled as they headed to the place where they were meeting Lena. Chapter Appendix 4, Explanation of Races that have appeared. This is an explanation of the races of Lambda that have made an appearance. There are some that have already been explained as monsters, but they will be explained as races of people here. The definition of people. Chapter 97, The Cream Expedition's Conclusion. Volume 5, The Monstrosities Expedition. The one with the title of Scaled King, the one who ruled the vast marshlands, was being served today, just like he was every day, by the servants who worshipped him. Over 100 years ago, he had been nothing more than an earth dragon. He was a member of a race of dragons feared for their earth attribute, but such dragons were indeed a lower-class race of dragons. He was a monster born in a dungeon that had appeared in the marshlands. He was not a boss or a mid-boss, but an ordinary monster inhabiting the dungeon's floors. He suffered because those inhabiting the area around him were monsters of the same rank as him, but one day, a great monster rampage occurred and he was released from the dungeon. When he went outside with the other monsters, he found that there were countless monsters that were weaker than him. He ate them. He attacked, consumed, fought, was attacked in return, fought and was engrossed in consuming more. Before he knew it, his rank had increased. And after some time, he heard the voice of Luvsful, the raging evil dragon god. You have quality. If you worship me, I shall give you my divine protection. He obeyed Luvsful's words and gained a divine protection. He continued to violently consume, and he, who had once been rank 7, became a great mad dragon. His limbs became fin-shaped and his head and torso became like those of a crocodile, but he did not care. As a monster, an increase in rank was something to be happy about, and if that resulted in a change in form, it was nothing to regret. The lizardman that he had previously obeyed now obeyed him, and now that he had devoured his most powerful enemies, he now spent his pleasant days ruling as the Scaled King. The lizardman would bring him food, and if it wasn't enough, he could simply eat the lizardman. He stared at the treasures that he had collected and dozed off to sleep while having the lizardman polish the scales on his back that he couldn't reach himself. There was nothing better than this. He no longer needed to do any fighting himself. But by having the lizardman worship Luvsful as well, he was not reprimanded, but had his divine protection strengthened instead. He had thought that time would simply continue passing like this forever, but his lizardman servants had been making noise lately. It seemed that some of the conquered lizardman groups were no longer obeying. It was bothersome, so the Scaled King did nothing and simply went to sleep. The next time he opened his eyes, he was delivered a message that they were under attack. What insolent fools dare they defy the Scaled King? I will devour them. After eating the lizardman who had delivered the reporter's breakfast, the great mad dragon with the title of Scaled King left his den for the first time in a long time. In the vast marshlands, a large number of lizardmen were fighting an allied force made of other lizardmen, ghouls and undead. It was the allied force that was pushing forward. My army is overwhelming, is it not? Said Cesare, performing general-like work for the first time in a while. It was so overwhelming that there was no need to tell Cesare that his words were triggering a flag. I did make sure that it would become overwhelming, said Vandali, whose skin was as white as wax even in the sunlight of this hot, humid summer. They had started by searching for the groups of lizardmen that had made non-aggression pacts with Taylorsheim 200 years ago, holding flags of the same color that had been used when negotiating with the lizardmen back then. But when they found these lizardmen, who had ruled the marshlands 200 years ago, they found that there was only a small group of only 30 individuals now. There hadn't been any lizardmen smart enough to understand human words or write characters, so Vandali made a zombie out of the lizardmen he had defeated during the search and had them translate. Vandali learned that the marshlands had now been ruled for a long time by a powerful dragon and the group of lizardmen who worshipped Luvsful, the raging evil dragon god, who had given this dragon his divine protection. No matter how much Vandali talked to the lizardmen or listened to the spirits, he couldn't get any idea of where this dragon had come from or what kind of dragon it was, but he did learn that it had adapted to the marshlands and ruled over numerous earth dragons and rock dragons. And the number of lizardmen under the Scaled King's rule was apparently over 3,000. The enemy group had used the dragon's power to bring many other groups under its command, maintaining their numbers by hunting other monsters and fish and training their warriors in one of the 2 dungeons that had appeared in the marshlands. Lizardmen were rank 3 to begin with, but they were the most intelligent among demi-human monsters excluding superior races such as noble orcs. Lizardmen warriors had more endurance, more composure and better decision-making than unskilled bandits. The fact that they had formed a non-aggression pact with Taylorsheim 200 years ago was proof of their intelligence. It seemed that there were many high-rank lizardmen in the Scale King's group, so considering that the battlefield would be a marshland with poor footing, conquering them through sheer strength would be a poor plan. If rock or wood golems were to be used as disposable soldiers, they would quickly sink into the marshes. So how had Vandali cut through the Scale King's intelligent lizardmen who weren't affected by death attribute charm and added them to his own army? He had shown them his overwhelming power. Lizards. Choose whether you want to obey us or die here. Choose quickly. We have short tempers. The rank 10 zombie hero Borkus, the rank 8 Union of Bones Notchen and the rank 7 Ghoul Tyrant Vigoro had intimidated the lizardmen with their bloodthirst and anger, with the translating lizardmen zombies next to them persuading the lizardmen to surrender. Foo, it does look quite painful to have one's limbs severed. Do you wish for us to kill you? Oh no, what we desire is not your lives, but your absolute obedience. Please consider this offer. If you submit to us, I shall sew your limbs back on, just as they were before. The rank 10 bellman persuaded the lizardman along with the lizardman zombies translation, maintaining her usual business-like smile. Obey us. Braga shouted. You foolish people. Said Eleonora. I am telling you to surrender to Vandali's armor. Aren't you going to use your charming demon eyes? Basdio asked. There's no point in doing that because its effects are cancelled the moment eye contact is broken. Eleonora told her. The three of them had beaten all of the lizardmen half to death in order to make them understand the difference in strength. Monsters generally only obeyed those stronger than them, so the only way to bring these lizardmen over was to use violence and the language of physical actions. Vandali had peacefully sung an endless song among some of the lizardmen groups as well while scattering paralyzing venom into the air. Of course, with the scream and mental encroachment skill included. By the time the paralyzing venom had worn off, these villagers of lizardmen believed without a doubt that they had been under the rule of Vandali all along, not the Scale King. The above methods had been used 2 months ago on the small groups outside the marshlands, and 1,000 lizardmen had become allies and, for some reason, the group that had joined Vandali and his companions from the beginning, the one that had been friendly to Taylorsheim in the past, had become much more loyal in the process. With things being so one-sided, I have the feeling that it would have been easier to simply conquer them by force, said Ches Air, half joking. Ches Air, you are getting ahead of yourself. And Shashhua is making a sad face, so don't say that, said Vandali, glancing at the lizardman Geronimo Shashhua, who was acting as a mediator for the other lizardmen. He was a descendant of the ones who had made a non-aggression pact with Taylorsheim, and he was currently looking at Vandali with the expression of an abandoned puppy. It was incredible that he could make such an expression with his cold, reptilian eyes. The truth was that lizardmen were not a race created by Vida, they were just monsters. Vandali and his companions had no reason to give them any consideration. But Vandali had yielded to Shashhua's sorrowful tears, deciding that the lizardmen would merge with Taylorsheim after the Scale King had been defeated. Incidentally, the name Shashhua was a conversion of his original name in the lizardman language so that other races could pronounce it. Your Majesty, even if you are weak to women and children, why were you persuaded by the tears of a lizardman? Shazair asked. I've always liked animals, Vandali explained. But when I was on Earth, I couldn't have any pets, and in origin, I was a guinea pig. And in the end, it had simply taken a bit of time, and the lizardman hadn't posed any particular danger to anyone, so he was sure that nobody would mind. Also, it was true that it would be convenient to use the lizardmen, who were adapted to this terrain, to manage these vast marshlands. More importantly, the enemy has revealed its trump card, said Vandali. Oh, those are lizardmen royal guards. Shazair exclaimed. That is a monster that normally does not appear in the absence of a lizard king, Your Majesty. Powerful-looking lizardmen with better physiques and equipment than the others crawled out of their den. According to Ches Air, they were members of quite a rare race. They joined the front lines, but they weren't enough to turn the tides of the one-sided battle. There were still 2,000 lizardmen on the Scale King's side, but on the side of the Eclipse King Vandali, in addition to the 1,000 lizardmen, there was a 1,000-strong mixed army of ghouls, undead and monsters. And the lizardmen were not affected by Vandali's strength and followers' skill, but the strength and subordinates' skill was taking effect on them. There was no way that a few dozen elite individuals joining the front lines could make a difference. Perhaps flustered because of this situation, the dragons that were likely the Scale King's most powerful servants emerged. Earth dragons and rock dragons, 6 in total. They were scattering their own lizardmen as they charged onto the front lines, so they were making the battlefield even more chaotic. But the Scale King's lizardmen gave hissing cheers and raised their own morale. The Eclipse King's army cheered and raised their morale as well. Delicious looking meat. Kill them. Kill them. There were no dragons around Taylorshire these days, so everyone was fired up. Although Barrigan's Fall Life Mountain, a B-class dungeon, produced many wyverns, the spawn rate of earth dragons and dragons more powerful than them was low, so this was a chance to have some dragon meat for the first time in a long time. In fact, these rank 7 and rank 8 enemies stood no chance against the elite members of the Eclipse King's army. Great Splitting Axe. Vigoro cut through the neck of an earth dragon with an axe made of the Demon King's horns, and next to him, Notchen, who couldn't be described as anything but a mountain of bones, gave a roar as it swallowed another earth dragon whole while gouging out its bones. This is the time to show the bravery of the reborn Black Bull Knights Order. Run, my beloved steed. The zombie knights of the Black Bull Knights Order, who were formerly from the Mage Shield Nation, attacked a rock dragon together, mounted on their sturdy, somewhat sinister horses. The rock dragon was rank 8 dragon that was as large, powerful and sturdier than anything else, as if it was actually a boulder that had begun moving. However, the knights were making sport of it, splitting its shell with their black halberds and claymores made of death iron. Incidentally, the horses that they were riding were the horses taken from Karkan and the Red Wolf Knights Order in the Hartnett Duchy, and they had now become monsters. They were now rank 3 demon horses, feared monsters that war horses who had basked in the endless blood and screams of the dying on the battlefield could transform into. They had frightening appearances, but they would not be scared even when zombies approached. They were omnivorous and would eat the weak monsters that they trampled under their hooves, so they were convenient mounts. Another dragon was petrified by Belmond's transplanted demon eye and sliced into pieces by her metal threads. Another was slaughtered by Basdia and Eleonora. One particularly pitiful dragon had its throat destroyed by Braga and his companions so that it couldn't release its breath attack and then used as a living sandbag by the less experienced black goblins and Danubises. Both allied and enemy lizardmen were dumbfounded at the sight of the dragons, whom they had always considered to be absolutely superior beings, being defeated one after another. Shashua, who was in the troop headquarters with Vandali, was dumbfounded as well. Rank 7 and 8 monsters appear in the dungeons at home, Vandali explained. We won't struggle with enemies like this. Dragons themselves didn't appear in the dungeons, but monsters just as powerful did, so defeating these monsters was to be expected. Your Majesty, it is time, said Shazar. Yes. Well then, I'll leave the rest to you. A few seconds after Vandali spread his spirit form wings and took into the sky, a particularly enormous dragon emerged from its den with a thunderous roar. Not only the lizardmen, but those in the Eclipse King's army were quite disturbed at the bizarre appearance of the Scaled King, who resembled an enormous crocodile with fins for limbs. A rank 10 monster was one that was powerful enough to destroy an entire nation. It would not be strange for regular monsters and ordinary adventurers to flee in panic from such a foe. That was likely why Borkus gleefully jumping in with his enormous sword raised was an unexpected development for the Scaled King. Finally, someone worth fighting. Borkus roared. The Scaled King showed nothing resembling a movement until his snout had been torn to pieces by the tip of the magic sword. As his blood sprayed into the air, he finally roared in anger. Spacing out, ha! Borkus shouted. Don't doze off. Open your eyes. Vandali thought it would have been fine for the Scaled King to keep dozing off, but it seemed that Borkus, who found even the bosses of B-class dungeons to be not enough of a challenge now that he had become rank 10, wanted to fight the Scaled King in earnest. As if granting Borkus's wish, the Scaled King's fighting instinct awakened. He let out a howl in place of an incantation, released earth attribute and wind attribute spells, swung his tail like a whip and thrashed his fins. His mayhem could only be called a natural disaster. Any creature caught up in it would be thrown about and pulverized. Gahahaha. Just like that. Borkus laughed, undaunted. He was rank 10 as well, and most dragons would be more powerful than undead, but Borkus was a zombie who had regained all of the strength that he had possessed as an A-class adventurer while he was alive. On top of that, he was equipped just as well as an A-class adventurer, or even better. And his attribute values were enhanced by the strengthened followers and strengthened subordinates skills. But at rank 10, even a level 10 strengthened followers skill would make it difficult for Borkus to overcome an opponent a rank higher. A rank 1 goblin's physical lifting strength increasing by 500 kilograms would be a dramatic increase, but for a dragon who could lift boulders with ease to begin with, a 500 kilogram increase in strength would still be amazing, but not as dramatic. The same principle applied here. But Borkus was the same rank as the Scaled King. Only one of them was under a strengthening effect, so the difference was great. Ha! The sword that the kid made for me really has a different sharpness to it. The enormous, 3-meter-long sword that Borkus was currently wielding had been created by polishing the Demon King's horns with the Demon King's blood, then combining it with Death Iron. The Scale King's scales were so solid that even a first-rate swordsman would be helpless against them, but they were being torn through by a super first-rate zombie swordsman wielding a sword created with a material that could even shred adamantite. I suppose it's about time, Vandali murmured. Looking down at the cornered Scale King from the sky, Vandali decided that this was a good time and cut his own wrist with his claws, activating the Demon King's blood. Red-black blood gushed out of the wound, rapidly clotting in a cylindrical shape. And then he activated the Demon King's horns, forming a small, aerodynamically shaped horn the size of his fingertip. The Scale King let out a particularly long, loud roar. A pillar of thick purple light descended upon him from the sky. This was the familiar spirit descent skill that High Priest Gordon had once used, the skill that allowed a god's familiar spirit to descend upon the user's body and strengthen their attribute values. The Scale King was a monster, but he was a follower of Luvsful, the raging evil dragon god, so he was able to have a familiar spirit descend upon him. This dragon was powerful to begin with, strengthened further by familiar spirit descent. It was possibly a dangerous enemy even for Borkus. Fire. Vandali pierced that evil pillar of light created by familiar spirit descent with a bullet from his telekinesis cannon, loaded with the effect of soul break. Some kind of indescribable scream echoed out as the pillar of light crumbled and vanished. Vandali's wings were beating as he hovered over the Scale King, who had frozen in place in a dumbfounded state. Vandali sighed, thinking his work was done, and then felt confused. It seems that I succeeded in interfering with the familiar spirit descent using the Demon King's horn bullet that I fired with a gun barrel made with the Demon King's blood, but what was that scream? He wondered. Could it be that it hit the familiar spirit itself? Eleonora and Belmont had concluded at an early stage that the Scale King might be able to use Luvsful's familiar spirit descent. The evil gods possessed their own familiar spirits, and they could bestow the familiar spirit descent skill to their followers, even if they were monsters. Therefore, a plan to deal with it needed to be discussed. But Vandali's apprentice, the former adventurer and current undead researcher Luciliano, had said, "You can simply shoot through it with your gun thing, master." Vandali had been doubtful that the descent of a god's familiar spirit could be interrupted by a gun, but everyone had immediately agreed with Luciliano. "It's okay, I'm sure you can do it, Vandali. You can easily beat a familiar spirit of an evil god," said Darsa. "Indeed, you should have confidence in yourself, boy," said Zadyrus. "Vandali-sama, you have already destroyed Turnisha, who was a subordinate god of Hihireushukaka," said Eleonora. "A familiar spirit is just small fry." Encouraged, Vandali had decided to give it a try. The Demon King's blood, once coagulated, wasn't as hard as orichalcum, but harder than adamantite. Vandali had created a gun barrel using this, loaded Demon King's small horn into the barrel and fired it as a bullet. As a result, he had actually managed to prevent the familiar spirit descent. It was possible that the soul break in the bullet had damaged the familiar spirit itself. "Well then, I'll leave the rest to you," said Vandali. "You got it," Borkus said. And then he raised his sword once more. "Now then, let's continue." For the first time, the color of fear appeared in the Scale King's vertical pupils. The levels of the no-attribute magic, mana control, artillery technique, God Slayer, commanding and strengthen subordinate skills have increased. Nothing particularly miraculous happened. Borkus fought a reasonably fierce battle while saying it was a little lacking and then pierced the Scale King's forehead. He was happy that he had finally gained a sizable amount of experience. He was happy that he had finally gained a sizable amount of experience points from defeating an opponent as equally powerful as him. And Vandali, who received approximately 10% of everyone else's experience points, had leveled up as well. "With this, my treecaster level has increased to 100, he said happily. "I'm looking forward to hearing what kind of new jobs will be available." "Botchan," said Rita. "Will your next job be Medici after all?" asked Saria. "That's my plan," said Vandali. Vandali had avoided the Medici job as it sounded like a suspiciously ordinary job, but according to the information that he had squeezed out of Turnisha, whose soul he had destroyed in spring, acquiring the Guider job was a requirement of becoming a champion. The Guider job was apparently a job that made not only the job holder, but his companions stronger as well. Turnisha hadn't known the exact details, but perhaps it was possible that it allowed the acquisition of a skill like strength and followers that affected people. But considering that the effect of Vandali's Eclipse King title allowed all of Taylorsheim's citizens to be affected by strength and followers regardless of their race, it might seem that there was no advantage to Vandali acquiring this job. However, it was still a job that was a requirement for becoming a hero, even if this fact wasn't commonly known. There was no doubt that simply acquiring the job would be enough to gain the trust of the upper echelons of society, such as guild masters of the Adventurers Guild. It was a little sinister that Komama had been added to it, but it seemed that there were multiple varieties of the guider job. The champion Bellwood had simply been a guider, but Zakat had been a united guider. Considering that, Vandali decided that it wasn't that unusual for his job to have Komama attached to it. Jobs like Mage, Magic Warrior, Magic Sword User and Monster User also had Komama attached to them, but they were all normal jobs. The Komama in Medici probably just represented the fact that he had many monster friends. "If you become a guider, please make it so that father can fly," said Rita. Her father, the undead Sam who was possessing a carriage, still had his sights set on flying through the sky. He had been performing full-speed jumps from high places to increase the level of his impact resistance skill. It seemed that his long experience being a carriage driver while he was alive had given him fixed preconceptions that were hindering his evolution into an undead carriage that could fly. Vandali had been unable to help him, as there was no telling what effects using the mental encroachment skill to remove those preconceptions from Sam's mind could have. "I'll do my best," said Vandali. "Now then, I suppose I should help out with the post-battle cleanup as well." After the Scaled King's defeat, the surviving enemy lizardmen had already surrendered and submitted to Shashua, and the others dropped their weapons and raised their hands into the air, exposing their bellies. This was not an act of arrogance, but surrendering by exposing their soft bellies. It was the same as a beast showing its belly to an enemy. The ones that were not getting on the ground were staying standing because they were standing in water and would not be able to breathe if they lay down, as their home was a marshland. Vandali had thought that about half of them would try to resist or flee, but that hadn't happened. They switched sides quite quickly. Maybe this Scaled King wasn't very popular? Vandali wondered. "That's not it. I'm sure they just know that they would die if they disobey," said Rita. Vandali nodded, deciding that this was a reasonable explanation. This is thanks to Borkus's hard work. Borkus had stayed in an advantageous position the entire battle as he defeated the Scaled King who had ruled at the top all this time, while Belmont, Eleonora, Vigoro and the others had defeated the dragons that had been his most powerful servants as if they were small fry. Nobody could blame the lizardman for surrendering. "No, it was you more than me, kid," said Borkus, whose entire body was red with the Scaled King's blood. "Eh?" said Vandali. Borkus looked exasperated. "You're really confused, huh? But all I did was hit a large target with the telekinesis cannon I made by combining the Demon King's blood and the Demon King's horns," said Vandali. "I think it's true that preventing the familiar spirit descent was significant, but I didn't use any mana and didn't put myself in any danger at all, so it was an easy job." This wasn't a small achievement, but nothing that deserved to be taken notice of more than Borkus, who had defeated the enemy general. That was how Vandali saw his own actions. However, the reality was apparently a little different. "Listen," said Borkus. "That Scaled King guy was a priest for that Louvsful guy, the raging evil dragon god, the one that the lizardmen were worshipping, you know? It was only natural for that priest to be trembling after you shot and killed the familiar spirit that he summoned." "No, I don't think I necessarily killed it," said Vandali. "That may be true, Master, but even I have not heard of any incidents where someone attacked and interfered with the familiar spirit itself rather than its host. I was certain that you would be able to." "However," said Belmond with a bitter smile. Her eye, which had been blinded by burns, had been replaced by transplanting Turnisha's petrifying demon eye. "In other words, you shattered the enemy's hearts, Vandali-sama," said Eleonora. "Indeed, since you defeated the one that the lizardmen worshipped," Zadyrus added. "And unlike goblins and orcs, they are limited to living near water. Now that we have taken this place from them, they have no choice but to submit to the victors." Life seemed difficult for the lizardmen. "Well, the more that submit, the better it is for now. Please gather the important individuals among the surviving lizardmen, and please call Shashua here." And so Vandali acquired the great marshlands that had been ruled by the Scaled King. Incidentally, the total land area of the great marshlands was far more than the Hartner duchies. Vandali was 8 years old. In human society, he was still an ordinary person, but he already ruled over a country larger than a duke's territory, with an army that a medium-sized country couldn't hope to match. Monster explanation: Lizardmen. They are a race of demi-human monsters, and they are considered to be the most intelligent of demi-human races. In truth, their intelligence is not so different from that of Gilman, but lizardmen are considered smarter because they have mental structures that are easier for people to understand. Their base rank is 3. Their appearance is that of bipedal lizards. They do not have horns or any features like that. Even the largest lizardmen do not exceed 2 meters in height, so they are inferior to orcs in raw strength. However, they possess speed that orcs do not, as well as the intelligence to think about tactics and the composure to not fall for provocation and baits. They become even more powerful in groups, giving the illusion of fighting like a trained army. They use their advanced intelligence to create their own arms. Even their lowest ranked individuals equip themselves with spears, armor and small shields made from the scales of their dead brethren. They are clearly more powerful monsters than orcs despite both races being rank 3, but as they are limited to inhabiting environments with water, there are almost no incidents of them leaving these environments to cause harm to villages and cities of people. Also, unlike orcs, they do not desire human women for reproduction. Their reproductive power itself is quite low, so they pose less of a threat than orcs. However, large groups of lizardmen normally worship evil gods, so depending on the personalities of the gods that they worship, they sometimes form non-aggression pacts with people. However, as lizardmen cannot speak the human language, negotiations are limited to body language. Their scales can become materials for arms and decorations, and their meat is suitable for consumption. Their meat is little fat and resembles chicken in flavor. Also, calling draconids lizardmen or lizards is an insult, so that should be avoided. Chapter 98, The One Who Guides and the Ones Who Go On. Now then, we will begin the project to turn the marshlands into a Capricorn farm, Vanderlei declared enthusiastically, but there was actually not a lot to do. There were still only a few dozen Capricorns that had transformed from goats, so the only thing they could do was make preparations for a large-scale farm in
Okay, hello, this is your boy Shrimp, once again back to you guys. Right now, I will be ending this stream right here after the few chapters that we had. Um, yeah, some interesting stuff is happening right now. Some news about the Bravers in the other world, and a few situations of Vanity expanding his kingdom now, is moving on to some monsters territory and gaining the marshlands, and yeah, pretty much it's he's getting more people and all more uh, yeah, more territory for himself and his people, and so we are uh, he's getting more power from this also. So let's look forward to what else he can do with now all this subjects that he has gathered together. Also, we have some new skills that he gained, including the stuff that um, he's preparing for his fight against the gods and enemies like the five color blades in the near future. Uh, he's really determined to uh, achieve those goals that he wants to succeed in, especially the part where he wants to become an adventurer or just becoming a noble in the some country, depending on the situation. So those were the main things that he's like trying to achieve right now. So yeah, for the I think for the illustrations we can probably check the things that are happening here. Yeah, there's some illustrations for what happened just now in this yeah, in this chapter. So I think this is the monkey girl that has a a man's name. Tarnisha's a servant who became now becomes who became Vandal's new servant also, or butler. Mhm. So yeah, so she's also supposed to be a monkey. Yeah, half human, half monkey person. And this is Vandalin when he got the horns of the Demon King. This is really sick. I bet he can do a lot of stuff with that. Yeah. Uh, and yeah, I think this is Ternisha. Yeah, this is Ternisha. This is the cover right now of the story. So yeah, let's see. This is the manga. Don't have much info or other more illustrations for that. What are these? Oh yeah, yeah. The members of the five color blades. Okay. So, mm, all right. So yeah, let's just move on to those stories next time. I think that there's still more in this particular chapters, and a volume will gain more knowledge and stuff that will move on to the story in the near future, and more combat probably. Now that he's trying to extend his territory, we already had the lizard man that he managed to defeat. Also, him not noticing that he has an ability to uh, kill a god using his new abilities that he gained. Yeah, when he invented a gun, technically destroying souls using it. So right now, I think he still doesn't realize that it's a very powerful ability that is capable of destroying god. But he'll definitely notice it in the near future, and what else he could do with that. Let's just see. Okay, so now let's move on to this design I'm doing right now. So yeah, we got our got girl over here, Miss Wednesday Adams. Just gonna uh, add some few colors over here. Well, I need to put some well placed highlights maybe. Oops, that too. I think yeah, that looks good. That looks good. Oh yeah, a bit glossy. Yeah, there we go. That looks nice. So, so far the progress is getting really, really uh, vibrant now that we have added the color. The background I just quickly sketch, as you can see here. I quickly sketch some few backgrounds over here. We'll see next time if I would change this or add something different. But yeah, basically a forest with some tombstones. Yeah, some tombstones around. Make it look uh, very edgy, very dark, and yeah, too godlike. I'll make some probably some purple clouds at the background due to the purple highlight that I put over here. I just love how I mix the colors of the hair. Right now it's pretty vibrant, yet still blending really well uh, with the warm and cold colors right now. Mm, I'm not very sure about this part. If I would maintain this blue highlight over here, maybe I'll just erase that. Uh, let's see next time I'll when I yeah when next time I'll see this with fresh eyes. I don't if I can keep this style over here. But for the skin right now, I'll be adding some few more bright colors that would really make this some uh, bright highlights for the shadowing maybe, or some a bit of blush. uh, she's a very pale character though. mm, Not really sure what I could do. Well, let's see in the next stream. Maybe I can add something, some kind of a black rock shooter kind of skin tone, or maybe because I really like black rock shooter's skin tone, just this pale blue skin. But yeah, she's not like that kind of character, so I'm not sure if I could do that here. So I'm still maintaining the pinkish brown skin tone. Mm, but yeah, the lips the lips is really slick right now. Perfect. The eyeshadows perfect also. I don't know if I can do something better next time. Let's just see. But for now, it's kampikine. uh, can't wait to move on to the clothes too. But yeah, I'm enjoying the skin uh, coloring right now. I'll add some really interesting stuff next time. A bit more highlight on the chin and the nose to make it more prominent, and yeah, a bit of vibrance to add on some of the parts over here, especially at the bottom of the eyes or in the cheek area. But yeah, but I still want to make her look pale, not too vibrant, maybe. Hmm. Yeah. So now this is the progress. Wonder what I can do with the clothes. Should what blending I should apply onto this. I'm kind of reluctant to do something like that because I haven't tried blending on the clothes before. I did, but it's not as satisfying as I did with the hair and the skin that I've been doing from the past projects. I'll see the guides that I'm looking at right now. Uh, yeah, these are very interesting ways of coloring. I would really love to master this. Hmm. As you can see here, some guides that I've been following. I mean, I need to create more highlights over here on the chin, definitely. Yeah. Anyway, hmm. Oops. Sorry about that. Alright, so I got the skin here stuff. My other issue here right now is also the line art. Now that I've pasted it over here, I also want to edit the line art a bit. So I've added this layer, as you can see, some editing of the line art. But I'm probably probably going to put a different group above all of the all the color and line art. That will be for the eyes, definitely for the eye color and the eyelashes, so that we can do some really heavy editing over that, because pretty much the shape is already kampaki, but yeah, applying color onto this would be kind of disastrous due to the sketch. So we need to highly edit this. Hmm. And I really want to put some effects on the eyelashes too. So it needs to be above the line art. I don't know if I'm happy with the eyebrows also. Maybe I could change something with this. Let's just let's see what I can do next time. Is it also too low? Maybe. Mm, yeah. Okay. Anyway, that is so far the progress of Wednesday Adams fan art right now. Thank you very much if you have watched this stream and or the vlog, and please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy this. And this process will definitely help you if you are a beginner. But if you are a pro, please leave some comments down below if you want to help me improve more. Because sometimes still don't know what I'm doing with some of the parts of the sketch, the designing, especially the coloring part right now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I still want to find things that I need to improve more. The method I'm using right now, by the way, for the coloring is something I'm haven't tried before. As you can see, what I did here is I did. Let me just close this first. All of them. Uh, okay. So what you can see, what I did here is that I did the values and shadings first uh, with the line art, and then I just divided also the parts that I wanted to, the hair, skin, and clothes, made folders over them, and then I just after dividing them, I copied uh, the values below here, the base color values, and I paste them over a flat base color down here, and used a soft light layer and then merge them, making this base layer have some few vibrant colors on it, not just black and white now. And I put a layer above where I started coloring over it and applying this blending, which is pretty cool. I love what I did with it. Yeah, that's pretty much what I did with the coloring, and I think I'm very satisfied with this kind of work style. It's also pretty clean, I think, compared to my last designs. But the only thing that will be separated from the color over here will be the layer for the eyes next time once I apply it. Okay, I think that's enough explaining of what I did here today. Uh, like I said earlier, just show your support if you've enjoyed this wonderful session today. And I'll see you again next time. This is your boy Shrimp, the ProDigal Shrimp, and I'll be designing more in the near future and playing some games also. So I'll see you again. Peace. Why did someone jump over there? Okay.